Sa no be tenedenli. Oh, about Ronnie.
I can do that.
Masai Ronnie.
Udake Nanechalia, Jekaidin Tanits Kaisrain Yesdeltik. Sanata Nassadetel. Sanata Danilia is detel. Sotnin is detel. Dieten Tabidis Arayeltik. Abalerener. Do Nesfadies pizza detil. Do be there as detel. Pina lerenda. How it's all my relations.
Masai Ronnie. And Masai Geraldine for suggesting that. I'll just share my screen here. I will share the agenda for today. We didn't get to show the screening of the Netitan version of the video, but maybe at our break time, we might have some time to do both. They're about 3 and 4 minutes, I believe. And then we'll, thank you, Ronnie, for starting us off in a good way. We'll have Chief Abraham do opening comments. Chief did mention he'll be leaving here about halfway through the meeting. We'll have the traditional food study. They'll be going first. They're actually from Manitoba, so it's actually like 7:10 for them, so it's really late for them. So we'd like to ask them to go first. And then we'll have the Child and Family Advisory Team update, the wildlife update, and then we'll go to the governance update. As you could see, we've cut down the time to 30 minutes per. So Child and Family would like you to keep it at 30 minutes and governance at 30 minutes. We gave, at Tetchet, we gave them an hour and a half each. So we're condensing the time to try to fit everybody in so we can be out of here at a decent time, about 9 o'clock. We'll take a quick break, probably a 10-minute break around 6:35. Right after the break, we'll go straight into fisheries, and then we'll have justice. And then I see young lady there, and she'll be doing the feasibility assessment for the Donald's Pinkut. And then at the end, we'll have question and answer period, and then we'll close it off with a prayer. So yeah, if you have any questions, by all means, please write them in the chat, write them down, send it to the three ladies, Rita, Blake, and Whitney. They're the ones who are kind of running this kind of gathering. Essentially, what we're trying to do is give everybody an update, each community an update of the foundation agreement and the advisory team meeting. And then after this session, each of the advisory teams will essentially start going to communities and start doing a bigger piece to this. This is more like updates. If you have any questions, those type of things. And then, the bigger sessions will happen from each, because there's a lot of important information out there that needs to happen. And we can't all do it in a 5-hour span, because, each topic is very, very essentially a big topic. So it'll take some time. So essentially, I'll pass it to Chief right now. I'd just like to remind everybody to be respectful on any of your chats, and just to be mindful with all of that. So I'll stop share, and I will pass it to Chief for his opening remarks before we go into the other stuff. So Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you for the opening prayer as well. Ronnie, it's much appreciated to be in the presence of the Don's Landing, Pinkut Lake community. I feel that these engagements were very important, and put up my hands to all the ones that are responsible for setting up these virtual engagements for each of the communities, so that the members or the citizens of Lake Babine are fully informed of the work that we're doing at the foundation agreement level. As you all know, we all signed a foundation agreement.
Recording in progress.
In September 2020. And I see that's the deputy's phone there making all that noise. So, but we signed a foundation agreement September 18th of 2020. And this foundation agreement is a roadmap to jurisdiction in terms of child and family, in terms of governance, justice, fisheries, wildlife, and we'll also have a traditional food study presentation here. So a lot of the work that is going to be presented to you is the works that our foundation agreement team and advisory team have been doing over the last few years, some more so than others. For an example, child and family. This was a advisory team, or this was a team that I was sitting on in my councilship under Chief Gordy Alec at the time. And this is a portfolio that I held for 3 years. And the amount of work that Emma and the team have been doing over those few years has been amazing. We've made strides such as bringing the prevention dollars to Lake Babine, and increasing the capacity under the Child and Family Services team. And, the engagement with the members out in Vancouver, Prince George, and Smithers, and including the 5 communities, these are the ones that we think and we know deep down in our hearts is that needs to happen, because this agreement is driven by the members. So this is one of the teams that have been the first team out, so to speak. We're going to have governance as well. Many of you know that the chief and council concept just doesn't work for our members, doesn't work for our urban members especially, and because the governing system there needs to be revamped. We really need to look at new ways on governing our own nation. And there are some suggestions and the presentations that will be brought forward to you. I like some of these presentations under the governance and the child and family, where it will give you an idea of what type of work that we're heading into. We also have the justice, basically looking at dealing with our own issues within our own community, like our elders did back in the past. Our elders always, I always use a story where there was an issue within the families. I remember my grandpa always going over to the other families and meeting with their elders, and basically they bringing the families together to iron out those issues. These are things that I remember when I was growing up, and these are things I feel that we need to find a way to implement some of these teachings, some of these protocols and procedures into our justice and governing system. We're looking at wildlife and fisheries, where we're wanting shared decisions, over our commercial fisheries and recreational fisheries, as long as, and with the moose habitat, on the verge of dropping, this is a prime time to start conversating or being our own conservation officer within our own traditional territory. These are the works that our advisory teams are bringing out, and it's important that you engage with the members, engage with this team, and bring your suggestion, your direction, and your thoughts forward, because without you at these meetings, this work would be meaningless. So I encourage you to get involved. I encourage you to ask as much questions as there is to ask, within this agreement, because, this is paving the way for our future generations. This is paving a way and making their livelihood that much better. This will definitely minimize a lot of the colonization that's going on today. So, and only way to get that done is for us to engage and to unite and to agree on each of one of these advisory teams that we're bringing forward. And I thank you. I thank you for your time and energy here today, and I continue to look forward to engaging and meeting with you as soon as our team here are scheduled to be out and about and meeting with you all. So Masaicho.
Hi, Chief. Great opening each. Before I move on, a few words before going. I know he's about I would like to no, probably eating. Oh yeah, I know. I might have to turn off my video. So um, I'll give it a few minutes. Okay, can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay. My know Darren Tellis is not my friend today. So Derek, did you want to say a few words quickly?
Sai Darcy. So Sivta. Adi Tio. Tebi Masai Cho Jane. Kaze Tanet and the Jane video got. Oh, basically with Nathan so Tanes at the Sawakasan. That's the DJ Tebi Zahn North at Edwaka Jane Jedit Jensen. Oh, would it okay Wakanason? Kan I council tlatlenet ni with Nathan alles Tanes at the Sawakasan. The then that's the tepi out in chance and Bakatsnes nisti that asni tani no willow as letwaka so hall tlatini with the kai with Nathan it so a casnin and tanis it the tetwaka and it's at me. Tacho can he build Whitney Darcy Meta Marvin Zio can he build no beata ni Eddie Messiah but it's the Jose Jane Zoom got tlatini like the do it and تقدر شكل بني يزدل أي وانات يزدل أني مسايا بدسني كاي أي من دي يقتلت هزي دو باي يزدل لك أي غني أتوقعت دو عيدت لك أي توقعات سنتلا تلتين يزدل نونا كودوت لي دي أتان بقاتنز نسيل سنوات أتان نتنيتلقي كونسل تقص Kani abuji uni tabel. Any tano what Tagaw is that del so wakas ninsa. Say walata as a special words and tano what it ends is neatly dasni Tlani dakti at it la Tlatlienel dagatni hawk so wits and sawe walata as a so special words and dasni jane hotsana and it's a it on say. But Nathan Tano wat Lake Baby Nation ab it's in Detley. It's a Wahasins and no nee, DJ Notson. And a Pinkut Lake, Donald's Landing, Old Fort, Tatchet, Fort Babine. So Stanezet tlatlenezet anawat an jesuits that etowakanis wakazins and etokagani darsidins and meta etabatsalte etano bena in delk tlawan or skat anawat an jesuits that etoka eta abatsle kanebiuta no beata ni and Kelly Lindsay anyway no tasti Anissa White anyway no tasti wa not liedet sanawat dan jesuits zelzel so wakasin nedwaka ani abstini tio so church ozil sai beside notice ni jane kaze zoom wat not line but let neto no tane in die letzte wakanen when I built a yedes like anyway Messiah but this the attends on no beja zotes that so wakasins so I was it so DJ notzen be a but leader like so wakanots and it guy it out etwaka jane abs dilsa etwaka jane council we adilsa so it's on what then just it's on what in the it so wakasins and wakaisi and not is that the Ketoka Jane Edwata. Tabi Masai Jane Abuzi Sai. Then Hanak Jazuna Raid the Aetwaka Jane Utazil some side chart outside not destiny.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. You're right. I'm hoping we can be in person soon. So it's great. Just to let you guys know that I will keep my camera off. It seems like my internet works better when, or my Zoom works better when my camera's off on days like today. So I'll go straight to the traditional food study. I believe that's Rebecca and Steph. I encourage you to introduce yourselves and a background. I'll give you 15 minutes. I'll pass it on to you guys. You're welcome.
Okay. So just very quickly, my name's Steph McLaughlin. I'm a professor at the University of Manitoba, and as Darcy was saying, we're calling in from Winnipeg out here on Treaty 1 territory. And our work, we work with First Nations communities across the country, but especially in Western Canada, mostly around food and environmental health and environmental justice. And so thanks for that. I'll introduce Rebecca now too.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here. I'm Rebecca. I'm also based here in Winnipeg, the beautiful Treaty 1 territory. I'm also a researcher from the University of Manitoba. I recently just completed my master's studies with Steph. So we've worked together over the past little while with communities across Canada and even internationally as well. So very excited to be here. We'll be chatting a little bit about some of the work we're going to be doing with the nation. But Steph, I think I'll turn it back to you to just do the general introduction.
Perfect, thanks. So so basically our study obviously focuses on traditional or country foods. And we've been working really actively since September, focusing on different things. And very broadly speaking, our work looks at current consumption around traditional foods, compares it to the past, and then kind of feeds into the foundation agreement by trying to document exactly how much people want to eat of what kinds of foods. And so it was important that that we begin by because obviously we're from outside, and so we really wanted to ground our Western science in kind of what we could learn just around why people feel traditional foods are important, what kinds of foods are important, and threats to those traditional foods. And so I came out in September and spent almost 2 weeks out in Lake Babine Nation, visiting a number of the communities. Didn't go out to Pinkut and Donald's Landing, but went to all the other communities, spoke to people. And while I was out there, I collected vegetation samples. And since then, I've been doing a series of interviews with community members. So it was really important for us to ground the work that we're doing now in those interviews. And so in part, what we did is we focused those interviews on, again, past, present, and future. I mentioned collecting vegetation samples when I was out there in September. And so part of our work focuses on contaminants. And so through interacting with people and through the interviews, we found, for example, that the copper mines are really problematic and lots of people are concerned about that and around forestry. And so what we're doing is we're collecting kind of with harvesters, we're collecting samples of fish, mostly sockeye salmon. We're also bear, moose, and likely char, and as well as the vegetation. And we're sending them to commercial labs to look at the level of contaminants, mostly focusing on heavy metals. Yeah, and so the other thing that Rebecca will be talking about is some of the tools that we're developing. And obviously the COVID has made things very, very difficult. And so we're adapting many of the surveys and other research instruments that we use as our work to work better virtually. And so I'll pass it back to you, Rebecca.
Thanks. I'm just going to share my screen here. So one of the tools is what we're calling a traditional food frequency questionnaire. And these are really built around some of the knowledge that we've heard from folks so far, particularly from the interviews and Steph's visit. And so these particular questionnaires just kind of help us better understand, again, what foods are folks able to currently access, as well as what would you maybe like to be accessing. And so here, this is just an example. I know that other groups have used SurveyMonkey in the past, but this is the platform that we'll be using again. And so these are just 3 sample questions, just kind of as a bit of a, just a little sample. So for example, you would be able to, in this question here, I would eat more traditional foods if I could. You could choose anywhere from really disagree to really agree, as well as share any sort of additional comments. Another question, for example, is I eat traditional foods whenever they are available. And so again, you can kind of pick on a scale from really disagree to really agree, and then provide any comments. And then again, there'll be kind of a section as well that allows you to provide any sort of concerns that you have about maybe the quality. And again, getting to that point where Steph had about the contaminants from the copper mines. So yeah, this survey will be available within the next week or 2. And so it is an online survey, and we totally recognize that that's not necessarily accessible to everyone. So we will be working with the liaisons to provide additional kind of supports for that. So whether that is maybe a phone call, so we could just talk on the phone and fill it out together. And that could also be through Facebook or other platforms. And then, but otherwise, this will be available online for any members and all members. And we will be offering a $50 honorarium for this. Of course, as Steph mentioned, we still have interviews going on, or are always open to talking more through the interviews. And so certainly if that was something you're interested in, and that just allows you to kind of share your experiences or your stories, and any sort of concerns, obviously more in depth than maybe the questionnaire allows for. And so that would also, we also are offering a $50 honorarium for those interviews. And then the contaminants piece is, again, what Steph mentioned. So Steph will be back in Lake Babine Nation in the spring, hopefully. And so there'll be an opportunity to do some more sampling at that time. And certainly if you or any members have, again, fish or bear or moose, we are collecting those samples and sending them off for contaminants testing. And there's an honorarium associated with that as well. So really we're just, we're looking to listen and to get feedback on anything associated with traditional foods, whether that's opportunities or concerns. And so these are kind of our initial tools, but certainly we're open to hearing from you as well. And yeah, we are based in Manitoba, but we're always just like an email or phone call away. And certainly you can go through the liaisons as well.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, thanks, Rebecca. Just to wrap up that, yeah, it was a great visit, and I just wanted to thank. Our original plan had been to hire a community researcher full-time to work with us, and that hasn't materialized, but kind of working for sure with Blake and Whitney and Rita has made all the difference in terms of kind of the success of our project thus far. Thanks, Darcy. Oh, and just to indicate too that because it is pretty late, I'm gonna have to duck out and be a dad. We have 2 young kids here, and but I'll hang around as long as I can. Thank you.
And sorry, Blake just prompted me as well. She said, and berries too. Yes, so berries as well. That'll be reflected in the survey, in the questionnaire, and certainly in the contaminant testing as well. Steph harvested or collected a few samples, I think, when he was visiting last time. Yeah, I'll stay on for maybe 10 or 15 minutes at least. And then if there are any questions, you can always just even message us in the chat as well. But we can stay on for a few and answer them now as well.
Perfect. We'll move right into our child and family. Thank you, Steph and Rebecca. Again, have a good night. I think I heard Crystal on earlier. Crystal will be doing the child and family update. Oh, she started screening. So I'll just pass it off to Crystal right here. Miss I.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Donald's Landing, Pinkut Lake members. I have my camera off because a couple of times I got booted out, and I'm really scared to do that during the middle of the presentation, so camera will remain off. I'm really looking forward, like our leadership have mentioned, we are going to be transitioning into our personal engagement, so I'm really looking forward to that. In our presentation, I will be sharing with you what we have developed for the jurisdiction, with the jurisdiction program and our CFAT team, what we would like to achieve within our next work year here. And so my name is Crystal Harwood, and I am now the jurisdiction coordinator for Child and Family Services. And so you'll see me working alongside the preventions team, our leadership at FA, our leadership at the administration level, and you'll also see me working alongside the advisory team and at the tripartite level, representing as best I can for our nation in this process. Right now, I'm really excited to present before you that we've really bridged a lot of gaps in between all of the other advisories and have been able to establish a good working relationship towards this new year. And yeah, so in our presentation here, I'm going to provide you with a bit of an introduction and background of the child and family and the advisory team, with the work plan and budget, the engagement schedule, our interim measure initiatives, and then our next steps. And so right now, for the introduction and background, LBN is developing its inherent law for child and family services to reassume decision-making authority for the safety and well-being of the children and families across Canada. LBN's law for its children and families will be in its BATHLAT's governance. Sorry, I'm going to minimize this. I'm not sure if it's showing on your screen, but LBN's law for its children and families will be rooted in its BATHLAT's governance, legal traditions, language, and culture. LBN's foundation agreement set out in the 7 milestones intended to guide LBN's law and service model development. And LBN's chief and counsel mandated a comprehensive members engagement process for the development of this law that is reflected of the new jurisdiction work with the plan and budget. And In this process, we have the Child and Family Advisory Team, and this was in agreement with Milestone 1, and it was established in the winter of 2019. And CFAT has a number of vacancies and it's expanding to include hereditary chief representatives from all 4 clans, and then a knowledge holder. I didn't get to update the slide, but we also have a knowledge holder position that is going to be appointed to the CFAT advisory team. And hereditary chiefs from all 4 clans are holding individual clan meetings in March 22 with CFAT. And then we're going to form into an all clans gathering. And this meeting is going to be held on March 24th, 25th, and 26th. And we will be able to address the vacancies at the individual clan meetings. And then we're going to bring forth the names and fill these vacancies at the all clan meeting as well. We will be establishing a firm agenda of what is going to be addressed at the all clan meeting in March at each of the individual clan meetings, because there are identified needs and measures that weigh differently for one clan as opposed to the other. For our team currently, we have myself as the staff, as the advisory lead. Well, I'm leading with the advisory as the jurisdiction coordinator. Then we have Murphy Abraham, who is representative of chief, and Millie Alec George, who sits in representing chief and council portfolio. Cheyenne Dennis is one of the hereditary chiefs, and there are 3 vacant seats available and 1 knowledge holder seat. We have Richard Williams, who represents Wayeni, and we have Donald's Landing that is vacant. And we brought the information to the clans, and we know that Caribou has been meeting, and they do have a candidate or a name that they want listed as a representative for this, and they're going to be bringing that name forward. And then we have Margie Alec, who represents Old Fort, Daisy Charlie representing Tatchet. Currently, we're sitting with a vacancy with Fort Babine and another vacancy for an urban rep. We have Stephanie Tom, who sits on the CFAT as the youth urban representative. And then we also have Brianna Michelle, who sits on youth. So I'm going to share the budget and the work plan with you. And as a summary, we want to show you that we're carrying over current interest in jurisdiction or current funding that is carried over with jurisdiction, and that is 685,000 that is being implemented into the new year. And then we also just finished submitting our proposal for the fiscal, and it's at the total of 1.2 million, 11,986.31. And that we signed this off in January. Normally these aren't due till the end of March, but we were given a deadline, and we wanted to highlight how this budget is currently sitting at 64% of the budget is inclusive of the membership engagement. So the majority of this budget that you're going to review here on screen, I'd like to share it with you because we really take great pride in that. So the meetings are not only going to be well invested in throughout the budget, like we said, 64%, but we're meeting at all levels. So in this work plan, we have the set out goals that are drafted before us with terms of agreements and negotiations with other delegated agencies and the governments, along with our membership. So that's why we want to heavily invest into the membership engagement, because it's important that we bring the information that the members want included in the developments of these acts and policies and procedures, or even the framework development. And we've created a Gantt chart that will track where we are, and it's listing out anywhere. It'll allow us to keep up to date and prompt with any of our work progress, and we'll be able to easily cross this information to our membership and show them where we're at, whether we're in planning stages or whether or not it has not even been initiated, or whether we're completed. And so we take great pride in that we're able to break each of these areas down in this process, because with jurisdiction, we meet at multiple levels. We meet at we have jurisdiction working groups, and these are consist of advisors and directors and then leads and representatives that not only sit at the CFAT level, but at the chief and council level, and then at the hereditary chief level. And the stage goes on, and we want to make sure that we track all of these developments and process. And this is a little summary of the funding that I was referencing to earlier in the summary. It's showing that we had the surplus carried over, and we're estimating, like if you look at the screen here, by August, we'll be able to have expended the surplus and we'll be moving into our new fiscal. And we did ensure that the majority of the funding was applied to the membership engagements. And so this is how we wanted to show you that with the new budget and with our surplus, we want to fully ensure that, you know, we're making every effort to invest in these engagements to get this process underway. And we're working alongside all of the other advisories. And like we said, 64% of the total budget, when taken into factor, it goes towards the engagement level. And so with that being said, we will be looking forward to meeting with the membership and discussing further in these engagements. Like if you see in this slide here, we have the engagement schedule set out for the year. And this is to meet with each of the communities, but it's also to meet with the membership in the urban areas. We have the young and single parents, we have the Vancouver urban members, we have the Prince George, we have Kamloops, we have decided to lay out Fort Babine, Tachet, Old Fort, and Donald's Landing, Pinkut with Waiani in a week. We want them consecutive day after day because to meet each of the communities and keep that momentum going and that feedback driving throughout this process, we'll be addressing multiple questions. I'll show you at the end of the slide the questions that we'll be bringing forth this round of negotiation or engagements with the members. But we also do the clan meetings. This March, we have individual clan meetings set out in the beginning of March, which will lead to our all clan meeting at the end of March. And I'm very excited to announce that we will be having Art Napoleon, who will be helping facilitate the meeting. So there will be some form of entertainment in that process. And he's looking forward to engaging with our hereditary chiefs. He has a bit of a background of where we're at with establishing our own governance and creating new agreements and developing new policies. So it's quite an exciting moment for him. He's looking forward to meeting with our members and especially our hereditary chiefs. And so with that, we want to let you know that for the Chief and Council have determined that Child and Family Services warrants creation of its own department within LBN self-governance to support current child and family services. And LBN's future jurisdiction, a Director of Child and Family Services position is being created and implemented. This portfolio will be similar to the health portfolio, but responsible for the overall administration of child and family safety and well-being. And our interim measure initiatives, Indigenous Governing Body, IGB, Notice of Significant Measures per Section 12.1, an Act of Respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Children, Youth, and Families. What does this mean? Well, before any social worker in BC can make any decision regarding LBN's child and families, they must involve LBN's community designate in planning and decision making. And this plays a significance in our current existing structure because right now it has been recognized. LBN is the community or a recognized Indigenous governing body, and the only designates that are approved to be appointed or supported in this process or initiative are the band designates, which are Fern Abraham and Yvette Pierre. In any child welfare case across BC and soon to be across Canada, as this IGB status is enabled by the Federal Act And this is an act respecting First Nations, Inuit, Métis children, youth, and families. And this takes away any discretion by social workers to not include LBN in any of this planning and decision-making for the safety and well-being of our members. And this was a huge initiative that was implied by our members at our previous engagements. They want to ensure that they have proper representation and they want to be represented by our own nation. When we bring out the questions and we're sitting with our members and engaging, that's the number one thing that they bring forth, is that they want that ability for our nation to be representing them. So LBN Section 92.1 agreement per BC's Child and Family Community Service Act. What will this mean? Well, the Chief and Council to request by letter and band council resolution development and negotiations of this operational agreement to set out roles and responsibilities and funding for such as MCFD to fund travel expenses for LBN's community designates, in-person participation in all members' child welfare cases, planning, decision-making across BC. This one's huge. This is being included in this level because the majority of the members are stressing that there is no access to any delegated agencies, or if there are, it's very limited. And there have been multiple stories and testaments shared from family members in their previous experiences that this needs to be enhanced. And so this is LBN Section 92.1 agreement. It's a huge measure, and Chief and Council are officially requesting for this to be commenced of negotiations and to develop an agreement with the Ministry of Children and Families. And it takes the IGB status much further as it clarifies and defines LBN's involvement in all the cases. So this agreement will also provide funding from MCFD to enable LBN's community designates to participate in person in all the planning or the decision-making for the LBN members involved in this system, in the welfare system across BC. And LBN has created a working group that has already developed an initial framework, and that will serve as a starting point for the development and negotiations of MCFD. And there's currently only one such agreement being negotiated in BC, and it is LBN's goal to be the second Indigenous nation to complete this agreement with MCFD. So for another interim measure initiative is the clinical supervisor secondment. Chief and Council are requesting via letter and band council resolution a secondment of a clinical supervisor to strengthen LBN's Child and Family Services team and contribute to LBN's jurisdiction service model development, utilizing the foundation agreement in milestone 2. And what this means is that the LBN Chief and Council are officially requesting a secondment of an MCFD clinical supervisor who has the expertise in all the child and family services, including child protection or the court proceedings, or to help with support and capacity of LBN's child and family services team. But this position will also be playing a key role in supporting the development of the service model that is acquired to exercise its inherent jurisdiction for child and family services. And this is where we play a huge role into ensuring that we're meeting with each of the individual clans and the hereditary chiefs, because it's been said over and over that we do have our own customary laws and that they existed before we were even impacted by all of the MCFD processes and all of the laws and everything. So these are the types of laws that are going to be asserted in this process, and the clinical supervisor secondment is going to support this initiative. And we have full expectation that MCFD will honor and support this request over the next several months. So for the prevention services funding from ISC, Indigenous Services Canada, exception for off-reserve services, what will this mean? Well, the Chief and Council are requesting by letter and band council resolution an exception to utilize prevention services funding for early intervention outreach workers in Prince George, Vancouver, Smithers to support members in all the child family cases related to child welfare. This is a huge one that is being addressed because currently right now the existing funding for prevention services from ISK flow through CSFS. And prevention services funding is a product of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And in this ruling that found that Canada discriminated against First Nations children and families, and they were insufficient. And so this is modeling an opportunity for us to get in there and improve and enhance on these services, ensuring that we're able to apply these dollars and not be restricted or limited to whether they're going to be serviced to on reserve members or off reserve members. And because we have a lot of members that are really battling and trying to access outreach work, like any type of representation, and it's not being accessed. So this is a huge movement to get the prevention services redirected and have it being flown directly to LBN and not through a delegated agency.
Hi, Crystal. So I just wanted to, sorry to cut you off there. So the situation behind the prevention services is that, you know, a few years ago, your very own Emma Palmatier applied for funds of over close to $400,000, and these funds were flowed through Kerisakani because they are a delegated agency. And then we developed another budget of $1.4 million for the second time around, and this also had to be flowed through Kerisakani because they are a delegated agency. And then we tried to push another $3 million ask because I know the importance of developing this, the Child and Family Services Department for our nation. That I felt that we need more capacity. We need to get more of our HCs involved. So this ask I brought to the board of directors level, and it was basically tabled because you know, there was some interference in terms of reporting, they were saying. But at the same time, I felt that we were doing our due diligence in reporting these funds to our delegated agency. And these funds are basically for our director, clinical supervisor, cultural workers, social workers, preservation workers, and also culture camps. You know, these are things that we really need to start implementing into our communities, because it's important right now that we retrieve these funds and we start hiring our own members to start doing the work in terms of culture, because our kids out there are falling through the cracks. There's so many kids being taken out of care and into temporary care or fighting for their lives, you know, on the streets or in the hospital on life support. And these are things that we really need to iron out in terms of uniting and working together, just so that no more kids fall through the cracks. So these are steps that that the leadership are taking in terms of bringing funding to LBN so that we can provide the services that is needed for all children in care. Masai.
Thank you. And that's another thing that we want to highlight, is that in this process, we've teamed up not only with other agencies or organizations, but with other existing programs within our nation to enhance on this effort as well. So in our engagements with CFAT and the membership, we've been able to bring membership that are living in Vancouver or Prince George, and they get to come home and participate in the cultural camps. And it's only highlighted and measured that, you know, we need to be doing more and investing more. And that's why you see that the majority of our work plan is invested in these engagements. So you'll see an improvement when we do access and establish this, that it'll allow us to create that support for their safety and their well-being, and also look at it more of a prevention measure than an immediate, like, you know, dire strait, we must get in there measure. A lot of the prevention initiatives need to be focused on. So with the LBN protocol with VACFAS, the Vancouver Aboriginal Child and Family Services Society, they provide child protection guardianship with the children in care services for LBN members in Vancouver. And this agreement will set out the roles and responsibilities for LBN's planning and decision-making for its children and families until its own law and service delivery comes into force and effect. So we're already establishing those connections with other identified agencies, because right now, currently, VACFAS says there's about 40 LBN children and families that are in Vancouver that receive services from VACFAS. So this agreement with VACFAS will help to clarify and define the roles and responsibilities for LBN's full involvement in the planning and decision-making for any of our members in Vancouver. It's going to strengthen that working relationship with existing organizations, but also take that back and allow us to provide and implement those services to our members as well. And so for our next steps, we are going to be, we've put in the interim measures and initiatives for Chief and Council's review. And we're also going to be bringing and highlighting information to the hereditary chiefs. We're holding individual clan meetings to discuss and determine with regards to the Child and Family Advisory Team designates, and then also the terms of reference. We have a lot of highlighted items that we're going to be bringing to each of these plan meetings. And we're also have the Child and Family Services Working Group meeting to solidify our draft review for the VACFAS protocol framework. This will be done by the end of the month. And LBN Working Group is going to confirm negotiations in meeting with VACFAS by the end of the month, and LBN Chief and Council send out the letters and BCRs for all the interim measure initiatives that we have just finished reviewing. In this process, up on the previous slide, I noted that we have a set out engagement schedule for each of our communities. At each of those engagements, we're going to be breaking out into different focus sessions, and our first round is going to be centered around the best interest of a child. And then we want to keep our engagements with the membership the same and focus on these questions per gathering. So these questions, I can make them available to you through email. I have also provided a copy to our tech team here, Whitney and Blake, and they have my permission to send the information to you via email so that you can review these, because these are the questions that we're going to be addressing at the community engagement level and at the hereditary chief level when we're meeting with the individual clans and at the all clan meeting with regards to the child and family measures and the CFAT. So every question that we can think about on how we want to implement our own culture, our own laws, and our own rulings into this process is going to be developed through sitting down with you and engaging and breaking through each of these questions. They're very important ones, and I'm only sifting through this because we've cut shorter on time. Before, I was able to run through question by question just to get your wheels turning on being able to provide feedback. But I wanted to highlight that at our previous engagements with the first round of questions here, one thing that was highlighted is the factor, like we asked the members, what factors need to be considered when determining the best interest of a child, of an LBN child, and who should be involved in determining the best interest. The gates just flooded and information was being brought forth. Well, in my family, my grandma knew best. And this is how our family operates. If mom can't look after baby, then baby goes to so-and-so. And we're like, well, really, how did that come along? Well, where was that decision made? And they're like, there's no law book. It's just how our family runs. And so structuring these details and this little bit of information really strengthens how we must assert our practices into these policies, into these agreements. And it's really, it motivates me to get out there and ensure that we're addressing every type of question that we can with each of our membership at all levels. And I'm really looking forward to our in-person engagements. Like I said, I'll be seeing the individual clans throughout the beginning of March, middle of March, and then end of March, we're having our all clan meeting. There will be a set agenda identified at the individual clan meetings. And in this meeting, you'll see that there's other advisory members that are going to be on board with presentation too. So I'm looking forward to this. And when we do meet at the individual clan level, I will make sure that I bring forth these questionnaires so that everybody's provided an equal, fair opportunity to provide feedback. They're not mandatory. It's just that, you know, some of these questions may trigger you, or you may be able to relate to them even easier than others. And there may be some questions that you feel we should be asking in this process, because this next round of engagements is critical to our process, ensuring that we have everybody's voices heard. So if you have any discussion or questions or any follow-up, please, I will provide my email in the chat box. Don't hold back on anything, because there's no such thing as a question that doesn't apply. Because even if I don't have the answer for it, I'm going to reach out and find out who we can work with and find an answer for. We've really been working really hard together with all of the other advisories to ensure that, you know, we start exemplifying that we're on the same page and that we're driving towards the same goal. And I'd like to thank you all for taking the time and investing it in being updated in our next round of engagements. I really look forward to seeing you all, and I appreciate everybody that's on today to provide these updates, and I look forward to working with you. You're going to continue to see cultural and traditional activities implemented in this process too, I would say.
Masai, Crystal, thank you so much for the update, and thank you for shortening it. I know it we had to switch it so we could fit everybody in, but by all means, I saw that it's July 11th to the 15th is the community engagement pieces. So please, if you have any questions or any comments, to write them down, pass it to the liaison team. They will get it to them. So yeah, so thank you. I know it's a lot of information, and I think that's what we're trying to get to, is try to cram a lot of information, like I said at the beginning, and then once this is done, we're going to start doing, you know, focused community engagement. For example, the governance coordinator, so Marilyn and I and the researchers are going to be going to community here soon, and hopefully, like Derek and Murphy, Chief Abraham was saying that, you know, hopefully it'll be in person. So those are coming up, and in saying that, I'm going to pass it straight to Kelly. She'll do her wildlife update. Please introduce yourself, Kelly, and yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Darcy and Hadi, everyone. I see a number of names and faces that I haven't met before, so a quick introduction. My name is Kelly Lindsay. I've been working with Lake Babine since about 2017. I am a lawyer, and I was originally started working with the nation during your negotiation of your foundation agreement. Since then, I've continued to work and walk alongside Lake Babine in the implementation of the foundation agreement, specifically in the natural resources sections, including wildlife, fisheries, and forests. So Masai Cho for allowing me to be here. It's such a privilege. I really love working with Lake Babine, yeah, so thank you for letting me be here. I'm here because I am the chair for the Wildlife Advisory Team. And so I'm going to give a presentation on the Wildlife Advisory Team, kind of who we are and what work we've been up to over the last year and a bit. So I'm just going to share my screen. So, who are we? I've got listed here just the members of the Wildlife Advisory Team. We're almost a full roster. We're just missing one rep. And so currently we are Peter Alec, Eugene Patrick, David Tom, and Eric Joseph are our HC reps. Francis West is Fort Babine, Matthew Alec for Old Fort, Bruce Alec for Wayani, Alex Joseph for Tatchet, Kirk Charlie for Donalds and Pinkut, and he's a new member, and so we're really excited to have a Donalds Pinkut rep. Ray Alex Sr. is our knowledge keeper. Dwayne Krause is one of our urban reps. Brendan Alec is our youth on reserve. Willie Bertacco is our youth urban. And then we have council representation as well. So Deputy Chief Derek McDonald is on the call, as well as councillors Jason Charlie and Verna Power. Dorothy Patrick is our coordinator and holds the ship together, and then I sit as the chair. As I mentioned, we have one vacancy. The Wildlife Advisory Team needs an urban rep, and so if you know of anyone who is a Lake Babine member who lives in an urban center, be that Vancouver or Prince George or Smithers, anyone who lives off reserve and harvests wildlife in any way, so hunting or trapping, please let us know. We'd love to have a full roster of reps on the team. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what are the roles of advisory teams and what is the role of the Wildlife Advisory Team in particular. So why does the Wildlife Advisory Team exist? As many on the call know, that the Wildlife Advisory Team and all advisory teams were created under the Foundation Agreement to provide input from the citizens of Lake Babine. You know, they're intended to be diverse, representative communities, or representatives of Lake Babine's diverse communities. And what does the Foundation Agreement Wildlife Goals say? The wildlife section of the Foundation Agreement outlines the work plan for removing barriers that are interfering with Lake Babine's ability to exercise your rights related to wildlife. So those are both your harvesting rights, but also your rights to manage your yinta and to make decisions about how wildlife in your territory are managed for. So the wildlife section of the Foundation Agreement is designed to move Lake Babine to a place of true co-management of the wildlife resources in your territory. And it includes measures to rebuild threatened wildlife populations, like moose, to healthy and abundant levels, where there are enough of each species in the territory for Lake Babine members to fully satisfy their harvesting needs. And also to change the face of compliance and enforcement in Lake Babine territory to a place where Lake Babine plays an integral role in monitoring and enforcing wildlife laws in your territory. And this, will include the application of Lake Babine's own wildlife harvesting laws as well. So not just provincial colonial wildlife harvesting laws. What's the role of the Wildlife Advisory Team members? Wildlife Advisory Team members are intended to gather perspectives and information from their representative communities. Then they're expected to bring those perspectives and that information to the Wildlife Advisory Team to inform negotiations, so to inform leadership and negotiators at the table, and give us direction for how to implement the wildlife section of the Foundation Agreement. Wildlife Advisory Team members are supposed to provide guidance on how to implement the wildlife milestones. And they're also expected to update Lake Babine community members on their work. So, the Donalds and Pinkut rep for the Wildlife Advisory Team is Kirk Charlie. And he's, like I said, he's just gotten started. So maybe give him a bit of time to get oriented. But, we're hoping that what Kirk's role will be to be the conduit between the Wildlife Advisory Team and the Donalds and Pinkut community, so you can go to him and ask him questions about what's going on at the Wildlife Advisory Team, what kind of work are we engaged in? And he'll be coming to you to ask you questions about, how would you like, how could the interests of Donalds and Pinkut, inform the implementation of the wildlife sections of the Foundation Agreement? So I also want to give a little brief overview of what the Wildlife Advisory Team has been up to since it was created. There are 4 foundation agreement milestones and measures that the Wildlife Advisory Team is actively involved in implementing. And I've listed those on the slide here. But the first of those is immediate measure 1, which is the completion of a moose study. So I know many moose studies have been done in Lake Babine territory in the past, but this is intended to be a broader, a comprehensive moose study that incorporates all of that research that's already been done, identifies information gaps, and conducts the research to fill those information gaps based on Lake Babine priorities and main concerns. So the work that the Wildlife Advisory Team is doing here is co-developing this study with the province. It's intended to cover the state and health of moose in your territory. A number of Wildlife Advisory Team reps have raised the serious concerns that they have about the health and abundance of moose. And we know that Lake Babine members are having a much harder time harvesting moose than they used to. So one of the longer term objectives under the wildlife section of the Foundation Agreement is that Lake Babine and the province will be moving to co-management of moose in the territory. And Chief touched on this in his opening comments. And what we're doing there is we're fundamentally changing the status quo as to how decisions are made about Lake Babine's resources. We're going to get to a place where Lake Babine will have an equal say as the province in all decisions made regarding the management of moose in your territory. And that's a longer term goal. We expect that to take 5 to 7 years. So the first step in getting towards that co-management is developing a shared understanding regarding the state of moose in your territory. So the Wildlife Advisory Team is going to be involved in the development of this moose study that will provide this comprehensive picture of all moose populations in your territory. It's going to cover things like the state of their health, how many of them are there, what's the state of their habitat, and what are the threats that they're facing. And this study is going to put equal weight on Lake Babine's Indigenous knowledge as well as Western science. And this is really where the Wildlife Advisory Team comes in. The Wildlife Advisory Team is going to be providing this Indigenous knowledge, and especially, again, through their engagement with you, with community members. So if you have any information to share or you want to know more about this moose study that's being developed, please reach out to your advisory team reps. And again, that's Kirk. So the second milestone that the Wildlife Advisory Team is involved in completing right now is milestone 2, relationship building with the Conservation Officer Service. So Wildlife Advisory Team members have shared a lot of information about harassment that they have experienced from conservation officers while out on the land exercising their rights. Obviously, this is totally unacceptable and something that we want to fix through the Foundation Agreement. So under the Foundation Agreement, the ultimate goal is to get to a place where Lake Babine people are doing the compliance and enforcement work in your own territory alongside provincial conservation officers. So that is Lake Babine members out patrolling the Yinta and ensuring compliance, again, with both provincial wildlife laws as well as Lake Babine wildlife laws. But again, that's a longer term goal, and we can't get there until Lake Babine has a better, more respectful relationship with the COS. And of course, in the interim, we want to stop the harassment of Lake Babine members who are trying to peacefully exercise their rights. We want members to be encouraged to be on the land, to connect with the Yinta, and to not be concerned about their safety or fears of fines or being charged when they're doing so. So that is why we're working on relationship building with the COS. A large part of this work will be educating the conservation officers about who Lake Babine is, why harvesting is so important to Lake Babine culture, what Lake Babine's wildlife harvesting rights are, and why fines or penalties like seizures of rifles can be so damaging to Lake Babine members. So we're scheduled to have our first meeting with the COS sometime in the very near future to begin this work. And then later on in the spring, we're hoping to have larger meetings with Lake Babine harvesters outside on the territory that will focus on this relationship building work as well. So milestone 3 is participation in moose management decisions. So as we develop the process to moving towards joint decision-making with the province for moose in your territory, Lake Babine is going to continue to participate in the province's moose management decisions in the enhanced ways that are outlined under this milestone. The Wildlife Advisory Team will continue to provide community input and feedback for this engagement and ensure that Lake Babine negotiators are representing the needs and desires of Lake Babine members in this process. The Wildlife Advisory Team has already provided some really incredible information and is really positioning Lake Babine as, you know, the key knowledge holder with regards to the status of wildlife in your territory, and an incredible partner in wildlife management in your territory. And so I've been super impressed by the quality of the work and the engagement that the Wildlife Advisory Team members have brought to the table on this work. And it's been a real privilege and an honor to get to be a part of it. The last milestone that the Wildlife Advisory Team is working on right now is something that we're calling the articulation of Lake Babine's wildlife rights. It's not the best word, but I've struggled to think of a better one to describe what we're trying to do. So the Wildlife Advisory Team has developed a survey that is designed to gather information about Lake Babine members' understanding of the contents of your harvesting rights. That is, we're trying to develop a deep understanding of what exactly your harvesting rights are so that we can better understand the barriers that exist to fully implementing your rights, and so that the negotiations team can do the work to remove those barriers and support Lake Babine members in the implementation of your harvesting rights. So this survey that the Wildlife Advisory Team has developed includes questions about when, where, and how Lake Babine members are able to harvest according to your inherent rights. And of course, it's really important that we get a lot of Lake Babine members to fill out this survey. You know, we really want to hear from you about what your harvesting rights are and how the negotiations team and Lake Babine leadership can help you freely exercise those rights. There's an online survey through SurveyMonkey. And if anyone is interested in completing the survey, I highly encourage you to reach out to the liaison team, so Blake, Whitney, or Rita. If they can direct you towards the online survey, they can also help you fill out a survey in hard copy. They can provide you just with a hard copy if you prefer, or work through it with you. So community engagement. Of course, as Chief mentioned at the beginning today, the foundation agreement is really a community-driven machine. And you know, leadership simply cannot do this work without Lake Babine citizens' input and direction. I think Lake Babine has a really rare and a special opening here to do something completely unique. The foundation agreement positions Lake Babine to take the driver's seat for reclaiming your jurisdiction, including for the management of wildlife in your territory. But this work simply cannot occur unless Lake Babine members and citizens are actively participating and telling your advisory team reps how you want this work to unfold. And so I think that this is the opportunity for Lake Babine citizens to make sure that wildlife management in your territory is done by Lake Babine and for Lake Babine, both now and into the future. And I would say, Masai Cho, everybody, for your time today.
Thank you, Kelly. Masai, Kelly, it's great to hear a lot about the wildlife. I know it's very important work. Just like any, child and family is important, wildlife is important. You'll hear governance here in a few minutes. You'll hear justice. Kelly is leading the fisheries too. So there's a lot more information. I did promise a break at 6:30. I see it's 6:27 right now. So we should take a 10-minute, 12, let's say 13-minute break. We can come back at 6:40, and then we'll come and we'll get straight into governance with Marilyn and then the rest of the stuff. So yeah, let's take a 13-minute break, and we'll see you back at 6:40. I'm not sure if we're going to queue up the video.
Like babin ausgies at the gadilson. Yen tachtle enan saatli. 6 at treaty boyin in the chen gohane in le. Etret agoste abingain. Enga qua gohneniskas. Go beyond and were lock tabi yakotnitia hadni. Et were go abajahane in le. Clock only, clock patatas and the an baratzenly, with over the clock lie oya salwas abatzle. Ni abad de ashuja, adajako, hane in le, wakasla habaleja the tuck. Clockon be slay wish chit habatain in le. Gani j more than go hane delis when you retain deal. Zako adakabatsohni in deal. Ni j more than tabin sat the thoughts about gadla deal zay. Been with the skites tenly adina. Abalene ditnik et day Zach William la Joe's Shaw, but Father Cookla high Shawnas. Ja, Ottawa the Cookbeat and boy in the Yen sotul shaw belewes dini. Kohane in de wakasla shokombish jujudela beya. Yen tahbini witten. La beleja that sak no yuzi. 1906 kohbeat and sat by in the witsan. So itla yen belewes dini. 1915 Ghanaian watalihni Royal Commission abatni nuhyet na hain engineers kas wala za nuhyet belahni anein la government habanendak batlats ohtanilke la nuhkanak so belewestini so weno dilkal 1950 anza wadat la nidoats tiyo tanawanin kas je wayani ninawanin le et kai tawatay government tahna nawal sa tinsay diyan tlana sa sa walewes dini. Tito ni Zabias kat edorza Canada BC Treaty bi yan nakpetlane de deli shatni it were wandanisir. 1994 Treaty tsatakil chat so neodet niltsanin zin. Canada, BC, Chaspi Abatanla. Wandanisir, Tasni Satni Utan, the line of Jadetta. Oh, Yetik, Basconikas, Yen Haisotina. The 8 Lake Babin Habisa Weotson. Babin government Habitakajenkas. Sana yen no lenes de del kas la anukas de del zilwani. 2020 Foundation Agreement akajenkas. So treaty awaitsen. Nes sana batatso detel. At then planede detnis. Foundation Agreement be audio 20,000 hectares del tekien no tayuzi. Nes sana yen tsayu no blenish del kaswani. Di abi nsana tsayeni hotazilzel. Nsana Indian agent habalane status. Tltsayetsak anukas de delzil. Nsana wasonye delish etwen beozai. Ndubi ang kadnits only so na jawe testak. Kwa weno zilzai takas no peza ana wewanilta so abajani stetel. Dai etni kaya hutaini tsayu hobe onzen. Ulcho advisory teams with anish. Abatanoch dish no lera duchni Tēnā tassuli. Tadeni wagatele. Anuinis noskak no chayu wa adetsi when it's at me.
Thank you for showing that video, Whitney. I just can't get enough of that. It's a good lead into the next talk. You know, essentially we talk foundation agreement. It is for Lake Babine by Lake Babine. So essentially you could hear every advisory team saying, please, we need to hear from the members, and that's what we keep saying. So in saying that, this afternoon, or this afternoon, no, the afternoon was, the remainder of the agenda, we still have governance, we have fisheries, we have justice, and then the feasibility assessment updates. So in saying that, I'll pass it on to Governance Director Marilyn Joseph Williams.
Ms. Aicha Darcy, can I share my information, my presentation?
Whitney,
Yes,
are
you
you able
can.
to? Yeah.
I'm gonna zoom through this one because I have two videos and we only have 30 minutes. The first one is about our foundation agreement. So governance is in the foundation agreement also. Oh, first of all, I'd like to say Masai Cha for all that's attending this video webinar. And we do have some representatives from Pinkut Donalds and Pinkut Donalds Masai Cha for coming on to listen to our presentations. I will go through the foundation agreement first, and then my next presentation will be on a self-government video. So the foundation, we have a vision. The LBN governance system is rooted in its inherent rights of self-determination and self-government as intended by UNDRIP and in a manner consistent with the Canadian Constitution. This foundation agreement, very much under our governance, we're looking at a new governing model, and that was to become coming from our own LBN members. And in that governing model, it will be up to you what you want in there and how the structure will be. The governance system will be founded on the Lake Babine Nation's indigenous laws, customs, and practices. And that's implemented in a way that empowers the Lake Babine Nation and our communities to meet their 21st century political, social, and economic needs and aspirations. Chief Abraham was talking about a new, how we're in this old band federal system. It's been way too long that we've been under that. So it's time that we move forward. And this is for our next generation, our generation and the next generation and the yet to come generation. This is for them. And we really need your help, the youth's help and the elders' help to really get this going. This is our governance timeline. In 2019, the researchers started, and in November of 2019, the governance advisory was formed. And 2020, the surveys went out, and September, the foundation agreement was signed. So in December, the interviews commenced. 2021, myself, I was hired as the governance director, and a coordinator was hired, who is Darcy Dennis. And our governance report will hopefully be done this year, but as everyone says, the pandemic was a challenge for all of us because we were supposed to go out into the communities. And that's what I like to do, is meet with everyone face to face. Virtual is I don't really like virtual because it feels like it's not real. But thankfully, the restrictions are going down, so we will be able to go out again. These are our governance advisory team. Victor Tom is the urban rep. Evelyn George is the Old Fort community rep. Fred Williams is the Wadat rep. Barbara Lawley is the urban rep. And Beatrice Michelle is your Donald's Landing community rep. As Anissa was stating, the advisory board teams are, they provide guidance, and Beatrice Michelle is your connection to the governance advisory team. So you can chit chat with her regarding how you want your governing model and how you want us to go about with our work. So we do have vacancy, which is Wayeni community rep. We've made our recommendation, and also Tachet community rep is vacant. And I'm happy to say that we do finally have political reps, and they're Derek McDonald, Melvin Joseph, and Bessie West. So this is the advisory urban and community reps. We do have here, we're with from Donald's Landing, Elder Beverly Michelle is our knowledge holder, and Mackenzie Adam is our youth rep, and Bradley Goler is our youth rep. Our clan reps, Fabian Michelle is the Galantan clan rep, Cindy Lawley is the Sehu clan rep, Vanessa Bull Patrick is our the Thomasu clan rep. And Eugene Patrick is the proxy for Frog Clan. Of course, everybody knows me. My name is Marilyn Joseph Williams, the governance director, and Darcy Dennis is the governance coordinator. The governance researchers and academic lead is Marvin Williams and Barbara Adam Williams. And Ellen Hanna is leading the researchers in the interviews. And when they do the interviews, they complete the translation of the interviews. And then the interviews are codified into different sections. Sometimes it's different sections of the foundation agreement, and whether it be fisheries, justice, family and child, all those get put, whatever they share is put under those sections. Our governance milestones creates clarity, balance, and unity with the Lake Babi Nations level government and community governance and off reserve. So you can see that the off reserve is very important for all of LBN and the membership, as this is what the leadership really wants to bring out and bring forward, is to include the off reserve. Meeting the governance needs and aspirations of the whole nation, and that's everyone. Incorporate the Lake Babi Nation's traditional governance laws, customs, in accordance with the direction set out by members. So this is what's completed to date. Is the working team has established a governance advisory team. They established a tripartite governance working group, and they hired a governance coordinator and hired governance researchers. These are all in the milestones. What challenges we've been facing, like I stated, because we couldn't go out, there was COVID-19 restrictions in BC, COVID-19 cases in LBN communities, but we did have Zoom meetings and interviews, but there are some cancellations. And in our TOR, we have vacant positions for communities, chief and council, and clans. Our TOR states, our terms of reference states that we have all of these in place before we have a meeting. So that was a challenge. And also there was death in the communities. Our work needs to be continued, and it's more in-person workshops, because that's when people understand it best, is when we do face one-on-one and face-to-face. And we need more educational awareness on the foundation agreement and educational awareness on governance. Our final report, will include steps and processes the governance research and advisory team performed to find out what LBN members say about what you want in the governance model. Information about the research, what was conducted, and how the information is helpful in the decision that have to be made moving forward with a structuring a governance based on LBN's inherent right to govern itself. And also it's a set of recommendations based on member information, which will reflect a model of governance and by and for LBN people. Here are next milestones. I will not go through it because they're not started yet, because we're still doing the research. But in a way, when we do go out, we will be talking about the citizenship rules that we want in place. And also we will in here be including the election code. So when we do go out, we'll have some information on that. And here are some of the acts that apply in Canada: the Indian Act, the First Nations Financial Transparency Act. This one is important because LBN signed on a financial administration law, and that makes LBN leadership and LBN accountable, because we need to be transparent with our financials, transparent with any decision making. First Nations Land Management Act, Forest Act, Youth Justice Act, Indian Lands Agreement Act, and British Columbia Cut-off Land Settlement Act, Family and Child Service Act. Like these acts are really important in the coming years. In the future, a lot of these, sure we will follow, but LBN will put in its traditional laws that we have in place already. So moving forward, in the end, close to the end, we will be ratifying this governance model. Ratifying process takes a while, so it has to go to Canada, the province, and they have to approve it. And then here we go. We're going to be implementing the new governing model, which will be a plus for LBN. Okay, so this one I'm done with. I'll go to the next slide. Whoops. Okay, did it say I stopped sharing or what? Okay, no. Sorry. Okay, so this one is the Lake Babi Nation Self-Government and Constitution. Everyone knows where we're from and what communities we have. So in Fort Babine, there's 5 communities. We have more than that. The Lake Babi Nation communities, we have more than 2597. It's like about 2,600 now. So we have Fort Babine community, Old Fort community, Tetchet community, Donald's Landing, Pinkut, and Wayeni community. And everybody knows where it is. And here's our traditional governance, and everybody knows we have the 4 clans, and we embrace unspoken words and oral history from our ancestors. And as described in the review of the historical journals or memoirs from past fur traders and words passed on by ancestors, the Babine people were self-governed using the Basat's traditional practices and laws. It states the reason Babine people used the traditional governing system was to stop the people from killing each other over land. Therefore, to maintain peace and order, they created Basat's laws and clans. So our clans are Lahjabu, bear. Jasehu is frog. Galantan is caribou. Lahdamasu is beaver. And everyone knows that our Babin people's social order is matrilineal, which means we fall under our mother's clan. Traditional laws, whether it be sacred, natural, or customary, are sources of indigenous laws passed down by our ancestors, practiced through social interactions, are agreed upon, and withstood the test of time because we're still practicing our bathats. As you heard on Betty's video, we hid our traditional system and we used it while we were in, like, we didn't actually show in public that we were practicing our traditional bathats. You saw that video about our historical grievances, the Barricade Treaty. This history is never forgotten. Every year, or when we do have our meetings, people from Fort Babine, members from Fort Babine, and other members always bring this up, our Barricade Treaty, our history. And we made our history by fighting for our rights and title. And everyone knows what it was about, as you saw in the video. And in the end, Father Kokala with Jack Williams and Big George went to Ottawa to resolve this issue and to negotiate. And after a long deliberation, the HCs were offered land, strong nets, farming supplies, and a school. So here you'll see the weirs, a picture of the weirs and a picture of Father Kokala and Chief Big George and Jack Williams. The second grievance is the amalgamation. This is where the Indian Act, before it was formed, before Lake Babine was formed, the government, Indian agents, they wanted Old Fort and Fort Babine to amalgamate. And on the side, there's a letter that's stating the two formed and now they're called Lake Babine Nation. The reasons why members question the legitimacy of the government records. So members that have been absent from a reserve for a considerable amount of time or are not permanent resident of their reserves were disqualified. They were disqualified from the voters list. And who certified this voters list correct were the Indian agents. So only the people that were living on a reserve voted for this. So, and it was important for Old Fort to be in Fort Babine because it was easy access to church, Hudson Bay Company, and a school. The reason why is that the government kept reiterating trespassing laws. So this is the reason why Old Fort signed that petition also. Right now, currently LBN is under the federal government ban system, and that kind of system is called the standard approach. And standard approach is decision making is always short-term and non-strategic, and someone else sets the development agenda. Development is treated as primarily an economic problem, and Indigenous culture is viewed as an obstacle to development, and elected leadership serves primarily as a distributor of sources. So what this means is that, you know, even now we're facing this because when we're doing, when we're filling out claim forms or any kind of claims or reports that we do, it's always the criteria of a government that we have to follow. It's not the criteria of what LBN wants and needs. It's always the criteria of the government, and that gets frustrating because you know what, we always have to put the money back and it's not covered. No, it's not covered. Well, you'll have to get it out of somewhere else and we're stuck, we're strapped. So this is the reason why we need to get out of the standard approach and not let the government tell us, okay, you guys need to follow this criteria. It's what LBN needs to follow. The next one is the rebuilding of the Native nations. And this is where this is the people and their vision of the future they want for themselves. This is where we want to tell the government, this is our wants and needs. And the Native nations assert their decision-making power. The Native nations back up that power with effective governing institutions. The governing institutions match Indigenous political culture, and that's what's happening now, as Crystal stated, is that the cultural activities are coming on, and it's continued. Decision making is strategic, it's not short. We have to look into the future. We need to not look at crisis manage, which is what's happening now. Is LBN is crisis managing every day. So we need to look at what's in the future and start following that plan. Leaders serve as nation builders and mobilizers. So in our culture and constitution, the rules by which the nation lives, acts, governs, and pursues the nation's that future visions. In the government, the offices and procedure the nation has set up according to its culture and constitution to carry out the wishes of the people. In corporations, programs, and services, the activities the nation uses to achieve its goals and the future it wants for its people. So this is what we want to head towards, is what do you want? And that's how we want our governing model to manage its operations. This is an example. It's really loaded here. I just wanted to show you that, in the Constitution, it always, there's approaches, there's 3 branches of government. And those branches is the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. The executive and the legislative are really important because under the executive branch is the prime minister and the cabinet. Under the legislative branch is the Senate and the House of Commons. The legislative branch, they approve of their parliament. They have the power to make laws, to raise taxes, and to authorize government spending. And they have 2 houses. One is the Senate and one is the House of Commons. The House of Commons is where the 338 members elected to represent the people from their electoral districts sit. And right now we have Taylor Backrack. I'm pretty sure everybody has met him. He's the NDP and he's a member of the parliament. And this is where he sits. The Senate is the upper chamber of 105 senators appointed by the Governor General to represent regions of the country. And just to let you know, you remember that UNDRIP, that UNDRIP legislation, this is where it's at in the House of Commons to be approved. And then when it's approved, then it becomes a legislative bill. This is the provincial government. Also, they have the 3 branches of government also, legislative, judicial, and executive. So in here sits Nathan Cullen. He's the NDP. And I think I seen John Rustad's name under Burns Lake for Nechako Lake. So I left his name on there. But they operate the same as the national government. This is the provincial government. And one thing is that the judicial branch acts independently from the executive and the legislative control. So I'm showing this to you because I have another example from a First Nation that we've been studying, and just to show you guys like how they run. This is the Haida National Government System. What I like about their system is that in their constitution, they start out with their own language, but in English, it starts out with the Haida Nation is the rightful heir to the Haida Gwaii. So that's really, really strong, a really strong statement. I really like that. The House of Assembly, you'll see up on top, is a legislative body of the Haida national government, lawmaking authority consistent with the Constitution of the Haida Nation, and they meet quarterly and annual meetings. The Council of the Haida Nation is the executive body. The Council of the Haida Nation is who sits in the House of Assembly up here. They administer rules, regulations as per the Constitution, governing power. They have 14 elected reps, president, vice president. The Secretary of the Haida Nation administers the Haida Nation treasury and holdings and manage the programs and staff of the Haida Nation. Here appears the hereditary chiefs. The council is made up of Potlatch 8 Cs of Haida Gwaii. They provide advice and guidance. Down below, you'll see all of these regional reps. There's a village council, Old Masset. They're elected by their own members. They enact legal policies and programs and accountable to its own members in that community and the Constitution of the Haida Nation. Another is the village council, which is the Skidegate Band Council. Same thing. I am not sure how to say this. Tag one, Vancouver regional rep. The regional rep here lives in Vancouver, and the people that live from Haida Gwaii that live in Vancouver, they vote this regional rep, and this regional rep comes into Haida to attend these meetings. And the second one is the Masset regional representative. Another one is the Skidegate regional representative. And another one is the Prince Rupert regional representative. So all of these sit on the Council of the Haida Nation, and there are 14 elected reps, and they have a president and a vice president. That president and vice president is the elected leaders. They're the first speaker and a second speaker. They speak on political issues. So like I stated, when you see in Canada, like legislative, the House Assembly, they're the lawmaking authority. The executive administers the rules, regulations as per the Constitution. The Secretariat administers the Haida Nation. And the Hereditary Chiefs Council provide advice. The rule of law for Haida is the Haida Constitution, the Haida Accord, the CHN Election Act, and the Haida Citizenship Act. The next one is the Nishka. I know this one's a treaty, but I just wanted you to show you that they operate the same as the national and the local democratic government. So you'll see again, they have these three approaches in here: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. One thing about the Nishka, when they have judicial, it's their dispute resolution. They seek to resolve dispute based on values expressed in the Ayak laws. This is their traditional laws, is what they're talking about. Nishkalism's government and the Nishka village government endeavor to resolve disputes between or among themselves, or they have to do the following. So the following is the establishment of another dispute resolution body, the referral to the Council of Elders, the establishment of Nishka Court in accordance with the Nishka Treaty. So this is where the Justice Committee might consider something else. So they're gonna have to look at the judicial part when they talk about, when they come up with some kind of strategy for LBN to have some kind of a judicial department. So And the executive is also their Nishka Lism's government. The executive consists of the officers, the chief counselor of each Nishka village. They have a village. They have these villages too. I don't know how to say it. Village government, Laxgalap, village government, officers of NLG, another village government, and another village government. And underneath it is the Terrace Urban Local, Prince Rupert, Port Edward Urban Local, Vancouver Urban Local. So this would be great for LBN to have its own regional offices, like in Smithers, Vancouver, and Prince George. This is to include the officer members, and the officer members can vote for their own regional reps. So here we are. And since for past years, we've seen surveys, we've seen reports, and this is what they came up with back then. This was June 2013. This was done by the late Joe and Lake Bouchard back then. The Grand Council, this is what they came up with. So here you'll see the Grand Council concept, and this is an example. It doesn't have to be like this. This is because that's what the elders said on this when they had this workshop. The Grand Chief sits at the top. The 8 chiefs and elders council are on the side as advisors. Then the executive council will be made up of the 5 chiefs from the communities, and that will be Wayene Council, Donald's Landing Council, Petchet Council, Old Fort Council, Fort Babin Council. But in here, we'll have the other 3. We'll have the other regional. It could change. This will be up to you. And also they'll have portfolio committees. And also up on top, we have the LBN Constitution, which we really need, and electoral code and the community charters. The community charters, the reason why Nishka has the local is because they have community charters. They have community charters, and this charter is an agreement between each of these communities to say that they're going to be taking care of their own programs and also making their own laws, and all of that is what the community charter will have in place. So there's a place to communicate, something to go back to. Okay, the community charter says, if we're going to be doing this, it needs to go to each and every one of these communities. So this is what the Grand Council concept back then looked like, and it's just an example. The accountability, transparency, and respect and honesty. The communities will have its own chief and council, LBN lawmaking authority, operational funds for communities, LBN policies and procedures, community membership list, elders council, hereditary chiefs, youth council, community will feel included, decentralization of programs and services, decision-making powers at the community levels, reserve offices for urban members representation. Constitution will create, empower, and regulate government. Here's the Constitution, like I stated, and here's the 3 approaches: legislative, making the laws, rules, and regulations; executive is the administering the laws, rules, and regulations; the judicial is resolving disputes and enforcing laws, rules, and regulations. So this is what all the committees that are under the foundation agreement is working on right now. So we're getting ready and getting prepared, and this is just the outline for development of a constitution. And it's a lot of work, and we have a long ways to go, and we need everyone's help. We need the community's help. If you want to voice your opinions or voice your what you want to see in a governing model now or in the future. Do you want to change the electoral code? Do you want to have a a citizenship code? Because right now we're following the INAC code and that's not helping us. We're following the election custom code. So if we want our own codes, our own policies, we really need to get our act together. And that's when we need your help. So for years, the Lake Baby Nation envisioned itself to become a sovereign nation. The Constitution and self-government will enable the nation to make its own decisions, set their agenda that reflects the LBN interests and culture, which is what's happening. The nation ensures to incorporate Lake Baby Nation's traditional culture, language, principles, values, and this is to organize the community, its members, and the governing institutions. The Constitution with proper roles and responsibilities, citizenship, lawmaking, ordinances, regulations, institutional governments will provide the Lake Baby Nation the ability to self-govern in its best interest of the nation. So I recommend that we start thinking about creating this new form of government and a constitution so we can move forward to bigger and better opportunities, whether it be economically, socially, politically, and culturally. So we need you. Help us make this happen. Contact Darcy Dennis to organize an interview with the membership, interview with the researchers, and all of that will be documented. And then hopefully we'll have a new governing model. Masai Cho.
Thanks, Marilyn, for shortening it. And I know there's so much to talk about. And it's great. Thank you. It is a lot of information in a short period of time. But at the same time, please listen out for any community engagement stuff. And like Beverly was saying, we want to hear from the community. What time of the day, what time of the week, those kind of things. We'd like to hear from you, and we're going to try our best to do what is asked for. I'd like to note Barb and Marvin are here tonight, and they're the ones leading the interviews. They've interviewed, we're up to about 70 members right now. Approximately, I don't know the exact number, but we want to hear from everybody. And this is your chance to say, Donald's Landing wants a representative at the table, for example, right? This is your chance to say that, and we're going to write it down. We can't just steal notes off Facebook or Instagram or any other social media. We actually have to have you come talk to our researchers, and we'll do those things in a good way. So yeah, please get a hold of me. Once we get the community engagement going, the researchers will be open to do one-to-one interviews. I know things are opening up, so I don't want to take too much more time of this. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for the update. It's going to be more focused at the community engagement sessions. We're going to focus in on governance, and that's what I mean. Like, earlier we heard Kelly talk about wildlife, and then we heard CFAT coming in July. So, just be expected to be in meetings a lot too. Yeah, so and saying that, I'm gonna go straight into fisheries, and then right after fisheries we'll have Anissa with justice, and then we'll have the feasibility assessment stuff. So back to you, Kelly. Thank you again, Marilyn.
Masai Darcy and Masai Marilyn for that great presentation. Hi again, everybody. So I chair the Wildlife Advisory Team, and I also chair the Fisheries Advisory Team. So I'm going to give you a brief presentation on what the Fisheries Advisory Team has been up to and who the members are. So up on the screen here are all the current members of the Fisheries Advisory Team. We have Henry West for the Caribou Clan, Herbert Williams for Beaver, Eugene Patrick for Frog, Sam Tom for Bear, Clara Williams is our Fort Rabine rep. Desiree Loyi is our Old Fort rep. Alex Joseph is in Tachet. And here for Donald's Pinkut, we have Beverly Michelle. I saw her on the call earlier. So hi, Beverly, thanks for joining. We also have Craig Patrick Sr. for Waiani, Joseph Charlie Jr. as our Youth on Reserve rep. Charlotte West is one of our urban reps. And our council reps are Robbie Reed and Councillor Jason Charlie. Donna McIntyre, the Lake Bavine Fisheries Director, also sits to provide technical support to the team, and as well as technical support is also provided by Dorothy Patrick as well, and myself. Oh, sorry about that. Vacancies. There's currently 3 empty spots on the Fisheries Advisory Team. So we're missing 1 urban rep, we're missing a knowledge keeper, and we're missing 1 youth rep. So once again, if you know anyone who lives off reserve and is a Lake Bavine member and has an interest in fish or fisheries, 1 knowledge keeper with regards to Lake Bavine traditional fishing practices, or 1 youth member, please let them know that the Fisheries Advisory Team would like to recruit them. So similar themes here in terms of why do we exist. So like the other advisory teams, the Fisheries Advisory Team was also created to help support the implementation of their section of the Foundation Agreement. However, the Fisheries Advisory Team is in somewhat of a unique position because the Fisheries section of the Foundation Agreement is actually unlike the other sections of the Foundation Agreement. I'm not sure if anyone here on this call has experienced dealing with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, but they are notoriously slow and very bureaucratic. So they were really slow in coming to the table when the Foundation Agreement was being negotiated. And during that time, Lake Bavine leadership had managed to secure a really good agreement on so many other subjects. And they wanted to start having the benefits that would flow to Lake Bavine citizens from those other sections of the Foundation Agreement start moving forward. So a decision was made to not postpone the whole Foundation Agreement, just to wait to engage in what was expected to be a slow and frustrating negotiation with the DFO. So instead, what was secured under the Foundation Agreement was a commitment from DFO to sit down and negotiate a fisheries agreement with Lake Bavine that would include a number of specific topics. So while Lake Bavine doesn't have a fisheries agreement just yet, and we know it's going to take quite a bit of hard work to get one, we do have a commitment from Canada and British Columbia that any agreement we reach will be consistent with a shared vision of the future that is outlined in the Foundation Agreement. That shared vision is an end goal where all fish populations, but especially your tallock, are healthy, abundant, and sustainable. Where the Lake Bavine people are able to sustainably harvest enough fish to fully satisfy both your domestic needs, so that's your food, social, and ceremonial needs, as well as to receive the economic benefits from the fisheries resources in your territory. The vision states that the status of the Barricade Treaty will be resolved, which means that Canada and Lake Bavine agree, will reach a space of agreement regarding the contents of its agreements and the contents of the agreement and its commitments will be fulfilled. Lake Bavine will also participate in fisheries management with Canada and the province in accordance with your inherent rights of self-determination, self-government, and your Aboriginal title. And this will also be done in a way that is consistent with your traditional role as stewards of all the fish in the Bavine territory. Lastly, management of Lake Bavine fish will be done in a way that acknowledges the downstream, that the downstream and coastal fisheries have a significant effect on your fishing rights, just like your stewardship of your fish has a significant consequences for the health of the skeena as a whole. So we're really trying to take a whole lifespan approach here in the management of the fisheries and acknowledge that all stages in the life cycle of a salmon are important. And therefore, everyone who's affecting those salmon all up and down, the whole main stand of the skeena out into the marine, all of that has an impact on Lake Babine rights. So as I said, the Foundation Agreement Fisheries section is a little different. We have a commitment to implement the vision on that last page. And the way we're going to get there is through the 2 milestones that are shown on the slide here. Milestone 2 is to confirm the scope of the fisheries negotiations. And then milestone 3 is to actually do those negotiations. So we're still in the milestone 2 work. Lake Babine leadership is actively negotiating with DFO to confirm what is going to be included in a Lake Babine fisheries agreement. So that is to define and confirm the scope of the negotiations. The fisheries advisory team has been supporting this work by helping the negotiations team understand how members are exercising their rights, what's working well and what's not, and what kind of improvements Lake Babine citizens would like to see. Specifically, the advisory team has provided feedback on and revised the initial list of topics that was put together by Lake Babine's negotiations team and expanded the scope of the topics that were tabled with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So once the scope of the fisheries negotiations are confirmed, the advisory team will continue to support the negotiations team in the actual negotiation of an agreement with DFO, including by reviewing and providing feedback on Lake Babine proposals and responses, as well as by providing Lake Babine Indigenous knowledge and information to help shape the contents of the agreement. So the advisory team will help the negotiation team figure out, what kind of stuff Lake Babine members want or don't want to see included in any agreement that is sought with DFO. And of course, this is going to be done by the advisory team fulfilling their roles and obligations. Oh, sorry, I missed this slide. On this slide here, they're the same roles and responsibilities as all advisory teams. You saw this slide under the Wildlife Advisory Team presentation, but just the same, fisheries advisory team members are expected to gather perspectives and information from their communities, to bring those perspectives and information to the fisheries advisory team to inform negotiations for implementing the foundation agreement, to provide guidance on how to implement the fisheries milestones of the foundation agreement, and to update Lake Babine community members on their work. And so again, a reminder that Beverly Michelle is the Donaldson Pinkut rep on the fisheries advisory team. And so if you have questions about the work that's occurring on the advisory team, I suggest reaching out to her, and she will be in contact with you to let you know what's going on as well. And that is, of course, the main and essential role of the advisory team. It's to act as the middleman between the broad and diverse interests of the Lake Babine community, the foundation agreement negotiation team, and Lake Babine leadership. And so it's only if community members are reaching out and engaging with their advisory team members that we will be able to implement the foundation agreement in a way that is truly reflective of Lake Babine Nation culture and desires. And so I know I sound like a broken record, but I really can't stress this enough. We really want to hear from you. We want you to contact your fisheries advisory team reps to tell them what is working for you, to let them know what is not working for you, to let them know what ways you think we can improve your access to fish and support the exercise of your fishing rights. So I urge you to do that and to help us build something that reflects your needs and your interests. And that's it for the fisheries participation or presentation. So Masai, for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, lots of talk about in fisheries too, as you could tell. It's becoming, and this is, I think about the foundation agreement in this way is that, that we're turning things around where, it used to be chief and council making the decision. Now it's coming to the community, and the community makes the decision. And like Kelly was mentioning, the line of communication is there, right? In a sense. So those things are slowly happening. It's getting there. We're getting there, right? All the advisory team members are coming together on Monday for a Zoom conference on Monday, this coming Monday, and then we're doing an in-person one. So we're trying to work things together and making everybody work together in a sense. So again, thank you, Kelly, for the great update. Again, please listen out for any fisheries update or any other community updates around these different advisory teams. I see 7:30. I want to go straight into justice. Fisheries, you put us back on track, so thank you. So I'm going to pass it on to Anissa White. She'll introduce herself and she'll explain what justice is about. So take it away, Anissa.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present to you tonight. So I'll just start by first acknowledging that I'm coming to you live. No, just kidding. I'm coming to you from Nanaimo First Nation, which is Nanaimo. And that's where I live with my husband, who's the chief negotiator for LBN. So LBN is very near and dear to us in more ways than one. So Atanse Kahkyo Niwagomantik Kitatamskaten Nawo Anissa White and Sigasun Nehio Esqueo What Paimsuak Esqueo Hi Kinan Skomtinawo. So what I said to you is that I greet you all, my relatives, that I'm really grateful and happy to be here. I have a good feeling that my name is Anissa White, that my family is Nehio or Cree from Whitefish Lake First Nation, which is located in Northeast Alberta. My family is also from one of the settlements, the Métis settlements in Northeastern Alberta. And I have twin boys, they're 10, and I've been working with LBN for 3.5 years with the foundation agreement. So my official title is nothing special. It's really just a worker bee, but I'm the technical justice advisor. But my main partner is Dorothy Patrick. Without Mrs. Patrick's work to create a plan to move us forward for the Justice Advisory Team to meet, there's just no way that we could have done so much in pandemic times. So I'm going to now take you to my PowerPoint, and I've shortened it a lot. So if you've seen this before, you're going to notice a lot of changes. Do I have the ability to share screen? Am I allowed to share screen? Okay. Okay, let's just get rid of a few things. Can you all see? Can you all see my PowerPoint okay? Okay. All right, well, here we go. Do I have 30 minutes or 10 minutes?
You have 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Feel free to cut me off if I'm going too far over. So first and foremost, I give recognition and respect to Chief Murphy Abraham and counselors, and to the hereditary chiefs, the clans, and the clan reps. Without the knowledge holders and all the individuals I've just named, there's no way that we could be considering justice in the foundation agreement. I'd like to talk to you about why the foundation agreement exists. Oh, that feels a little harsh. Feels like I can't see you. Okay, I'm just gonna pop you there. So when it comes to the foundation agreement, you will find justice right here in 14, you'll find justice. And I believe from memory, that's page 50, yeah. So if you'd like to go and look at it, by all means, we've worded it very directly so that when government people read it, that there's no confusion about where we stand. When it comes to justice, you can think about it in this way. What I'm calling it is the big three. Justice work is very vast. When we're talking about justice, we're covering everything from the criminal side, youth justice, adult, as well as all the way to the charges that have to do with the LBN way of life. So I'm just going to make a couple of important points first off. We are taking a preventative approach to reduce the interactions with the criminal justice system because we know that there's an overwhelming amount of Indigenous people that are filling up the provincial and federal jails in this country. That's just a fact. We make up about 6% of the population, but for reasons that are very easily understood, we make up 30% of the population. And interestingly, but not surprising, Indigenous girls and women are the fastest growing population in our jails. I will get to the other parts of justice that have to do with charges on hunting and fishing. They're all covered. So I want you to know that the foundation agreement is an incredible opportunity for BC Canada and LBN to shape the justice system. Each and every one of you will likely have a story or an experience that explains why we haven't had an opportunity to shape the justice system. You're not the only nation that has experienced what's been called in some of the case law and some of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings, the cascading, deleterious effects of colonial policy. Your nation is one of the many nations that have felt this and carried the burden, while mainstream Canadians have not been shouldering the burden in the same way. In light of this, I can tell you some good news. It's a bit late to tell you, but in 2020, something pretty special happened. You can see at the top here, we have the representative of the different Indigenous organizations of British Columbia. You can see that the BC government's logo is also at the top. You can see that there's the BC First Nation Justice Council logo. And what it is that they put their stamp on this agreement or this justice strategy. So what is it all about? I'll just touch on it for 5 seconds. There's really two directions that are happening in this province. The first track is to reform the justice system to be safer and more responsive to Indigenous peoples. The second line of work is to restore First Nation justice systems, legal traditions, and structures. Okay, let's just back up for a second. If someone ever said, so is the foundation agreement in alignment with what's happening in British Columbia? You could certainly answer yes, because these two tracks are exactly what our foundation agreement justice milestones cover. So that's really good news for LBN. So you heard me talk about the big three. The first area of work that LBN is focusing on is prevention and intervention. We believe that prevention and intervention are the most important ways that we can take that kind of approach to reduce the amount of our youth and our adults that interact with the system, especially our most vulnerable community members. Our people have suffered from over-policing, overcharging, over-prosecuting, and over-sentencing by a justice system, a NIDO justice system that is overrun with systemic racism. This won't be a surprise to you. Our people often experience violence at the hands of police. I acknowledge the harm and pain that may be experienced by people on this Zoom tonight. As one recent example, we bring to mind the late LBN member Everett Patrick, who died in Prince George from injuries sustained from being arrested by the RCMP at the beginning of the pandemic. Change is urgent and necessary. We are at a critical breaking point in this country regarding the so-called justice system and First Nation peoples. That is why this foundation agreement is coming out strong on these three areas that I have outlined. You heard me talk about hunting and fishing. I haven't forgotten that piece. So before we get on to who is on the team, I'm just trying to explain what have we been thinking about in doing this foundation agreement. As you well know, all of you on this call know too well that every aspect of Lake Babine life, especially when it comes to hunting and fishing, as your ancestors have always done in your lands and waters that you have inherited as Aboriginal tidal lands and waters, you have been criminalized. And I acknowledge the harm and pain that this has caused to your families, to your clans, to your communities, and your extended family systems. This has taken place through the enactment of unjust laws and the actions of overzealous conservation officers. So now that you understand that BC is saying, yes, this is the direction, now that you understand that we have taken seriously the incarceration rates of Indigenous people and the way of life to hunt and fish being controlled through laws, that is why we set up the Justice Advisory Team. So let's talk about who is on the team. And if it's okay, I'm just gonna come out here quickly and just do a check-in so I can see if there's any chats. Is there any comments that I need to address? No. All right. Okay, so who is on the advisory team? So on the advisory team, I hope you can see it. You have almost every position has been filled, but I want to bring your attention to the urban. We have an urban vacancy and we require filling of that vacancy. So I'm going to read out the names of the JAT team at the moment. Karen Marlowe, Mary West, Raisha Johnson, Fabian Michelle, Nadine Joseph, Geraldine Michelle, Beverly Abraham, Rosie West, Nancy Williams, Jimmy Williams, Sylvester Joseph, Stephanie Tom, Nicole McDonald. And then when it comes to your counselors, we have Counselor Debbie West, Counselor Melvin Joseph. When it comes to who are your support people, well, you can say myself, you've now met, and then Dorothy Patrick, which I'm sure that you know. The terms of reference, you could sum it up to say that we are looking to develop a new justice model for LBN. When it comes to the vision, we're trying to take a preventative approach to reduce interactions with the criminal justice system. At the heart of every strong community, and I stand for healed families, healed communities, healed adults, and healed youth, we have to put safety and well-being of citizens first. We have to disrupt cycles of violence and abuse. We have to look at service delivery and figure out, why is it so difficult to ensure that LBN citizens have access to timely legal advice from lawyers who understand the law? How is it that it is so difficult to understand when the next court date is? And then why does that result in a breach? And why is it so difficult to get access to things like housing, which makes such a difference when you're trying to continue and get stability in your life? And so on and so on. We're also thinking about, what does accountability look like? Not in the mainstream Canadian idea of accountability. What does it mean for LBN by LBN? What does accountability mean to involve the community? So oftentimes when I'm doing this work, a lot of people will say, well, come on now, you have to be tough on crime. Yes, you do. But I would argue that you have to be tough on social issues upstream. So for example, you have to be tougher on ensuring the safety and well-being of Indigenous women and girls. You have to be tougher on ensuring that there's housing, ensuring that poverty is addressed, ensuring that we have prevention. So that is the way that we're taking this forward, because we believe that through an LBN model, through an LBN justice model, we can do better. We need to do more to ensure that that LBN citizens have all that they need to achieve success. So when it comes to a lot of these advisory teams, you probably have noticed that some of them overlap. Thank you, breaking a cycle. Yes, yes, totally. So you must have noticed by now that the important work that's occurring in child and family has overlaps with the justice. And you're probably thinking that the work in wildlife overlaps with justice. And that's exactly how we designed it, because we know that living the LBN way of life can come at a great cost if there aren't proper protections in place to make sure that you're not interrupted from going through every season of your year to provide for your family. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on what this is, but I'm going to tell you that academics way more intelligent and paid much more than me and much more important than me have all agreed that when health and poverty and housing are not taken care of, it can really put someone on a negative spin. So I'm just telling you that we know that the intergenerational effects of residential schools, that the intergenerational effects of forced amalgamation, that the intergenerational effects of poverty and poor health, lack of access, suicide rates, all of these things, they just build and build and build. And sometimes we see our youth and it's almost like they're in a car going 180K an hour straight into a brick wall. Why? Because the criminal justice system is actually a terrible way, a terrible kind of like ecosystem. It basically doesn't prevent crime. It just mops it up. It doesn't actually do the work. Police and corrections, they don't actually do the work of prevention, right? So we're trying to take back control, and we're trying to put the safety and well-being of LBN citizens number one. When it comes to the buzz phrase cultural competency, it's a very, very, very important thing that service delivery providers, police, corrections staff, you name it, hospitals, we always want them to have more than just cultural competency. We actually are looking for something called cultural safety, and I'll touch on that later. But I made this diagram when I was trying to explain it to government people, because you know, they love their diagrams. So just had to give them what they wanted. All right, so let's jump straight into what we're doing right now. I want you to know that we are currently at Justice Milestone 2. Justice Milestone 2 is looking at how can we enhance the short-term delivery of justice programs and services. So here's what it looks like in practice. Well, we should be asking the First Nation, we should be asking the LBN citizens, what is it that your needs are at this time? That can be done in person, by Zoom, and through a survey. So that will be rolling out soon. The survey will be rolling out soon, and hopefully the engagement next. We're also interested in what kind of short-term improvements can be done. We're looking at a model to consider of how to have a presence of justice workers in your communities. We're thinking about that. It's come forward. There's a lot of good consultation as to what's worked in the past. We want to know. We want to know what worked for you. You can complain. You can give feedback that's positive. You can give feedback that's very negative. The moral of this story is we want the bad news first. we want to know what exactly is the needs, what is the pain point. And then from there, we can start to think about a proper model that's by LBN and for LBN. We also want to think about cultural safety training for justice programs. This is a bit of a bigger project. It's kind of looking outward, whereas the first one on engagement is looking in. You may remember that I said there is such an overlap with what happens in child and family and what happens in justice. Because of that, we're working already with the Child and Family Advisory Team, Alan Cummings and Crystal. We've had incredible amount of, well, just at the early stages of talking about the justice for youth. So now I want to just take you through the milestones so that you have what they are. Milestone 3 is where we consider what would it look like to develop a restorative justice strategy. So not the center yet, just the strategy at this stage. Milestone 4 is about implementing that plan and launching a restorative justice center. There's no details given or thought about at this stage, but it's where we get into LBN Indigenous law, where we're really thinking hard about the Batlat system. We're thinking about a research project to draw out those laws. We're thinking about bringing BC and federal government to the table. And we're considering what does it look like to do something that is not just restoring restorative justice type of work, but how does it look to actually begin to develop LBN Indigenous law? I know this has been covered before. So we're almost at the end. I told you I'd make it short and sweet. So far, you can sum up our strategic priorities in 4 ways. This is the graphic. Here's the summary, just for quick reference. Across your entire justice model, however it looks, we ask ourselves, does it meet this test? Does it improve access for citizens? Is there proper communication? Is there proper prevention? Is there a venue, process, or mechanism for resolving things? So when you get the survey, you're going to be getting a lot of questions around these type of topics, and you can be hard on these topics, and you can say access is the #1 issue, or prevention is the #1 issue, or all of them are. That's the kind of information that we're looking at. And just to prove that we've been busy at work, here's the information graphic that's starting to map out and give us a plan of where we're going when we're thinking about a justice model. So 2 slides left, and then I'm going to just take myself off the camera and put it back to the group. So next steps, you heard me talk about community engagement. It's very important that you tell us what's happening for you. It's very critical that we learn what are the needs and the gaps in areas. The Justice Advisory Team has been incredible at bringing forward that information. We have tons of meeting records that have all those lists. And now we want to take it to the citizens to get feedback. And then the next steps, and these are kind of like these are just like steps that happen around the time of engagement or just after. We're going to formally start working together with Child and Family, because we know that youth are at such an important developing stage in their life. They're coming out of their childhoods, they're entering into their teenage years and into their very early young adults. And we want to make sure that they're set up for success. We don't want them to be taken down by the system, because we all know once you've got one charge, or once you have been interacting with the system, it sends a flag to all the other systems to start watching for you. We want to protect the LBN youth. And the last one is develop an LBN cultural competency. It should say safety. I apologize. I'll just change that because it's so important to me that we're shifting out of this language. Thank you for your patience. Develop an LBN cultural safety oversight and education program. This is important. Creating policy and capacity for LBN, that's how you get noticed. That's how you get a seat at the table. You start to say that we need to be engaged on policing. We need to be engaged on systemic racism, complaints, governance. That kind of thing is really important that LBN gets a seat at the table and develops its own plan. So together we can really do a lot. I'm going to leave it on this slide. Thank you all for listening to me. I'm looking forward to learning more about what the engagement process brings for us. And the survey is just at the early stages of being developed. I've just put down some of the questions, and I'm going to be putting that together in the next few weeks. Thank you for listening. Kinanskom tinawa. Hi, hi.
Thank you so much. Masai, I'm glad we were able to extend your time. The Tachet community, we weren't able to give her all we can. So please keep your ears open for any community engagement that's coming up. Yeah, I'm sure. The feasibility assessment, I believe she was here
Hi,
earlier.
I'm still
Frida?
here. Yes. Can you hear me? Okay.
So I
think-
better be
I think, Darcy, your system's going a bit funny again, but I wanted to thank Darcy because earlier he referred to me as a young lady. And it's always nice to be called that, even though it is wrong. But who says no to that compliment? I owe him donuts now and maybe some A&W because I need to keep that love coming. Thanks for staying on, everybody. Frida Leong, I'm from Associated Engineering, and we're working on the community feasibility for Lake Bibi Nation, for Donald's Landing, and for New Fort. We're also working on the cultural gathering centers at Tachet and Fort Babine. So tonight I'm going to give you guys a quick run through the work that we've done to date for Donald's Landing and to go through the site constraints memo based on our site visits. So first, I'd like to do an acknowledgement. I'm on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam. I want to acknowledge all the Indigenous people whose lands that I'm residing on and the people who have cared for these lands since time immemorial. I make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and of gratitude. So I'm going to start my slideshow, but I'm gonna, oh, what have I done? Okay, oh crap. I never know how to do this properly. Okay, let me share my screen. You guys can see it? Okay. When I press that beginning thing, sometimes it goes a bit weird. Ah, there it goes. Okay. So this is, like I was saying, the site constraints and opportunities briefing for Donald's Landing, the community development feasibility. So the objective of this project was to look at a year-round permanent community on Babine Lake IR number 21B. And the big thing that we wanted to look at was the current housing needs for the community, the level of service that would be provided to residents for the proposed settlement, which would be year round, and the potential life cycle costs for things like the housing construction, the site development, the infrastructure, and to look at the potential rental revenue that would be generated by the proposed development. And the study would be used by the Lake Bibi Nation to gain access to available infrastructure and housing funding from Indigenous Services Canada, ISC, INAC, DAND. They've been called lots of things, and I think they keep changing their names to keep us on our toes, so we don't know who we're going to punch, and CMHC. And so our project understanding was currently, you guys have Cedar's little settlement at Donald's Landing, and which is about 30 kilometers north of Burns Lake. The settlement acts as a gathering point for fishing at different times of the year, and there was a comprehensive community plan that was completed for 2017 to 2020, and it identified that goal of that year-round housing development at Donald's Landing. So this project update is to talk through the memo and the key findings based on our environmental and engineering review of the proposed sites at Donald's Landing. So this was based on conference calls with a steering committee. So as part of the steering committee, there was, I think, Auntie Bev was there, we had Uncle Ronnie, we had Fabian, there was Auntie Betty was involved, Bernard was involved, Rick was involved. There was a few other, and Henry West, Uncle Henry was involved as well. So there was a few people that were involved on some of these calls that we had initially. We did a site visit. We did actually 2 site visits, and we reviewed the comprehensive community plan. And then we did a review of the online resources for the environment constraints and concerns. So looking at Donald's Landing, what we know today is this is the existing settlement. Can you guys see where I'm pointing at? Yeah, so this is the existing settlement. To the north, we have a wetland, and as we go west, from what I understand, this is an area that you guys had looked at previously and was previously settled, I think, by the nation and family members there. And then we also have this area that's to the east, and there's I think there's a DFO fishing hut here, building here, and then over here we come out and we're on the other side of the existing development. So as part of our site visit, we did a boat tour where we looked at the existing shoreline. We also did a walkthrough of the area. We looked just past the existing, there's some houses here at the end of Donald's Landing, just up the hillside, we looked here. And as part of our boat tour and all that, we looked at shoreline more to look at how, if we were to have any development and new community, if we had it on this side, if we had it on this side or any of the other sides, what would be the main concerns, right? What are we looking at in terms of the environmental and engineering constraints? So in terms of environmental and cultural constraints, one thing that was talked about was there is that wetland that was to the north of the existing development. There's also Donald's Creek, which is that riparian area that's close to that DFO fishing hut thing. And there's other creeks and tributaries throughout the area. And all this is high value wildlife habitat as well. And, you know, some of these trees that we see, and every time I see a cottonwood, all I think about is hay fever. But you know what? Birds love them. They love them even more when they're dead. So that's a problem. So that's one thing that we have to be mindful of, this wildlife habitat, when we're looking at if we have to do any clearing for the proposed development, if we need to look at how we're gonna, the community will access the water with this future development. We have to be mindful of things like the western toads. We have to be mindful of that fish bearing habitat of these river and creek tributaries. So what we have to be mindful of when we look at the environmental and cultural constraints is that if there's any cultural sites, and this is part of this ongoing engagement that we're going to have. Right now, we're talking to this group. We've talked to the smaller steering committee group. In the long term, we want to talk to the members at large for Donald's Landing and the family members to just get a better understanding of those cultural sites that people are aware of, that elders are able to identify, things we should avoid and things we should be sensitive to. We also need to have the mitigation measures, not saying that we can't build in a wetland, we prefer not to, but there's also other areas. Okay, if we're going to be next to a creek, what can we do to minimize our impact? What are the things we can do if we are in an area where there are western toads? Maybe it's something we do at construction where we have environmental monitors to look at where we can move some of these species to a different location that might be more suitable. So that is as we move down and we start looking at, what is, okay, we know the existing area, we have issues with seasonal flooding, right? From what I understand, the existing community down by the lakeside, every year you get flooding. It's not an uncommon thing. So then we looked at, now we've looked at the environmental constraints, the cultural constraints. We also looked at engineering constraints. And so for us as engineers, we want to look at an area. We don't want to split the community up in different pockets. When we split the community up in different pockets, what we have to be aware of is that we drive up the cost of development, right? And that makes it so it's not as feasible. If we can have community members more in as an area that's together, it's easier for us to provide the infrastructure. It's much easier for us, and it drives down the costs for us to have the development costs. And it means that we need to put in just one road, major road that's into the community, this new area, versus having a few roads to different pockets of areas. We want to make sure that we don't end up setting up a whole bunch of foreshore access areas, because we're looking at a pristine environment that we don't want to impact negatively. And then we also have to be mindful of these flats that we've talked about where there's seasonal flooding, and that doesn't work for long-term housing and year-round housing. And then what we also have to look at is how are we going to supply water to this community, and how are we going to provide wastewater treatment to this community in the long term. So as part of what we've done to date, we've done this initial review. We've looked at the sites. We've looked at what some of the constraints are in terms of the engineering and the environmental. But what we really need to do is have a follow-up in-person meeting with Donald family members, Donald's Landing family members, to talk through what we've found to date, to get their insight into what they think about potential sites for the community outside of the flat area. And then we have to look at acquisition of land. As we looked back, hold on, I'm going to go back to that map, because this is the thing that's the more interesting, I think. Let's see. Okay. I'm not very good at controlling this, it's obvious. So with this map, here, what we see is that Babine Lake IR 21B is this little area here. If we're talking about that we want to have this community, there's no way we can be in this area because we've talked about that localized flooding, and that we don't really have any place to place things like infrastructure, like a reservoir. We don't have a place, really room to put in a treatment plant and wastewater treatment. So what we're talking about is probably working with ISC to look at an addition to reserve. And that would be the acquisition of land. And that would be with discussions with ISC based on what we understand as of late, and discussions with Bernard and Bernard's contacts at ISC. The process of getting an addition to reserve is much easier than it was 10, 15 years ago. And that stands to good favor for us, so that we're not going to be fighting an uphill battle to get this adjacent if we look at adjacent areas here, if we look at adjacent areas here, there's a road that comes in here. So this might be a nice area up here. There's a road coming in through here, or this could be a nice area up there. Whether we look at this side or that side, we'd be looking at an addition to reserve. And that, like I was saying, is a process, but it is not a process that is something that we're not going to see happen. Like, it's not something that we're going to have to wait for our grandkids to, because things are changing at ISC. And that's the good news. We would like to also bring up that there has been an attempt at a survey. We tried doing one early on, but I think engagement was low because most people didn't know about this, what was happening. And I think most people have heard about Donald's Landing happening for years and years and years, but it's always been, pie in the sky talk, and it doesn't seem like it's really something that is going to happen. So people probably didn't take the survey seriously. But the good news is Blake, Whitney, and Rita are going to help with this next attempt at the survey. And they're going to reach out and they're going to provide this survey document. We're going to have it on SurveyMonkey. We're also going to have paper copies that they can send out to community members, to some of the elders who aren't so savvy with the SurveyMonkey, because quite frankly, probably I would even get it wrong. And I think that's an opportunity for us to really reach out and get more insight from Donald's Landing members, because what's really important with all this and what we have to be mindful of, the foundation agreement did get funding to look at the feasibility investigation into this community development, but the funding that we're going to require for infrastructure, which is the water treatment, the wastewater treatment, the water lines, the sewer lines, all those things come through ISC funding. And ISC funding only occurs if they see a real need for it. So if we do the survey and the survey responses show that we're only going to get like 20 families back here, the chances of us getting funding are not great. We have to show that there is a need for this community to happen here. We have to show that the family members are engaged to moving back here year round. We have to show that there is a reason for funding all this infrastructure, because just to bring roads in, you got to look at, to put in a paved road for something like this, it's probably around $800 a meter. And to put in a water treatment plant, which would have just, I'd say, just chlorinator, very simple pump house and all that, is at least $2 million. To do a wastewater, like a sewage lagoon, is at least $2.5 to $3 million. So you've got to realize that's a significant investment for Indigenous services, but they have to see that backup, that this is a viable community, right? And so when this survey does come out and you talk to family members, please encourage them to really spend the time to do the survey, to answer honestly, to get back to Whitney, Rita, and Blake, to do the online survey if they can, because the success of this and the viability of this and the feasibility of this is really based on the buy-in from Donald's Landing family members. This is your voice. This is your opportunity for ISC to hear you and to understand this need for your families. So, yeah, I'm really excited. It's such a beautiful area, and I'm so happy that I got to go out there. Fabian gave us some rough rides, because that's just Fabian. I gave him cookies even, and he still treated us like crap. Just joking. He's not on, so I can say all this. But any questions? Yes, he is. Okay, ITA land. So what you're going to see here, can you guys see the really faint lines? I don't know if you can. So as part of the interim treaty agreement, right? There was an ITA lands thing that was done, and it's just for this area here. You're gonna have to trust me with my little arrow here, that it's just there, right? And so Bernard did mention this to ISC, and the thing with the ITA lands is, depending on how your treaty negotiations go and when that happens, that's going to take much longer than an ATR will. So if we go for an ATR, we'll get this land a lot faster, right? And we won't, you can use the ITA negotiations for some other piece. You don't have to use it for here. Like, it's not a necessity to have to do that. What about Pinkut Lake? And that's another thing. So we can't choose Pinkut Lake and Donalds. We have to choose one or the other. And that's the important thing to realize. If we spread it, these families, yet again, we're having the populations, and ISC is going to say, well, 20 homes at each place, what does this mean to us? Do you know what I mean? Like, we have to look at how ISC will look at it, because whatever they don't pay for in terms of infrastructure, that means it's going to be a cost that Lake Babine will have to own source fund. Was there an environmental assessment done on the ITA lands? I'm not sure, but I can check with Betty on that one. I don't think there was, but as part of this, as we move along into design, we will be doing environmental assessments. Yes, yep. Any other questions? Auntie Bev might be trying to tell me something. She usually has some wise words for me.
Can I just ask a question to the members, Frida?
Sure.
Okay. So if you guys have a membership list or some sort of list where we as the liaison team can reach out to members and ask if they even want to do a survey, but to get those numbers so we can show ISC concrete numbers of how many people want to move back. So you guys can show them and be like, yeah, we have this many members, and then, you know, things will start happening. But if you guys have a list, yeah, if there is a list, if you guys can email one of us, one of the liaison teams, and then we can go out like door to door, or else we can email. I know elders don't really do email very well. So, but yeah, I'm willing to go door to door and hand out, like with the Old Fort membership list, I just drop them off at the house, their house, and then I go and pick them up. So I can do that definitely with Donalds and Pinkut. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm not sure who has it, but talk to my mom. Yeah, so I think, yeah, anything like this is going to help us. I just don't want to miss out, and I want to have that fair representation. I want to show ISC the need for it, and this is a really good time, because I think based on everything that's been happening in the last few years, we see that there's an appetite for ISC to rectify some of those wrongs, right? And you know, they say strike while the iron's hot. I'm saying let's do it. Let's make this happen. We've talked about Donald's Landing for God knows how long, right? Since I've been working with LBN since 2007, I've heard talk about Old Fort and Donald's Landing. So why is it not happening? What are we not showing them? And what boxes aren't we ticking for them to take it seriously, right? And so I think it's because we haven't been able to show them those numbers, right? And that's why I appeal to you. Like, I really hope you guys make your voices heard. But if there's any questions, you can always reach out to me. I don't even know where my screens are now. Hold on. I have to get out of that screen before I get dizzy. What have I done? Chat. Okay, I'm gonna put my email in here.
While Frida is doing that, thank you again, Frida, for this presentation. I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions after today because there's so much information today from every aspect of it. And I really appreciate what you said at the end, that the proof needs to be there, you know, or, you know, and that goes with all of the other advisory teams. That essentially that's what we want, is that backup, right? So you said, and that's great that you ended it that way, Frida. So thank you. It was just so interesting, like seeing this aerial view of Donald's Landing, right? And I know, you know, sometimes Babine Lake gets a bit rough, and you're blaming it on Fabian, but you know, you know, I know you're joking. Fabian's a good. He's on. I just saw him come on. So
yeah, oh no, he heard me. His ears were burning.
So thank you again, and thank you to everybody else. Are you able to stop share, Frida?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. But that's all we had for today. Thank you for everybody coming today. Please listen out for any of the advisory team, community engagement. Frida, I don't know what your plans are moving forward, just a survey, I believe. So listen out for that. The liaison team, Blake, Whitney, and Rita, thank you so much for doing all you do. And the two other coordinators, Dorothy and Crystal. You know, there's meetings upon meetings upon meetings to get to this point. So I think the coordinators and everybody staying out till 8:30 on their Wednesday night. We'd like to hear from everybody, like Beverly was saying. You know, we want to hear from the community, say what day is best for you guys to do meetings. I know Marilyn and the governance team, we're hoping to do in-person meetings sooner than later, as things are opening up. So please listen out for any of that. If you want to do an interview through Zoom or go see the researchers, most of you live in Burns Lake. Both researchers live in Burns Lake. You know, they came to Prince George, they've gone to Smithers, and they've gone to Fort Babine to do one-on-one interviews. So if you're interested, I'm sure they're open to that. So yeah, and thank you. I know Chief and Deputy Chief are busy and they had to leave today. So I thank them for coming, and I know they're busy meetings and you know, coming on too. So again, thank you to everybody for coming today. I don't know who could close this off in a good way. Beverly, saan no ba itenadandli?
The tenant desk was a so a little bit yet. Jen ye edit after elders la community any hapakana grafota. Teja no nak atoka anzo la so no te zohne. Onzen blahne diabetic kindly la which are on time. Et anzo hapochen kana onzen. Enga kaiwa arts eduhtachin. So jananino tehtieten tas pakaitentil. So pakan wewusyak. Et huda dehlieu katnissen. La time we 5 o'clock hosoksi. Et a supper time on sen. Deuhtjer. Kino sati no len. La skayeten. Kani altakni kat no tatiltai. So anu no people awaiting. Anuk no people altakni schools o until the schools of Laudin le. Well any ota wope onsen. Training a bohlai, wale bohli. Kay no soni kay do no tadel so anzo kani any abat oil. Enga kaya tu gananino te. Kay sonye biz that is one government no so lay ay. Kanen tani any hayil chak. Awete not less it's important that you know about it. Okay, dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day, this night that you have given us. We ask you to help these people, give them wisdom and understanding and guidance that they will know next time and that things will go right for all of us in our community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Masai Beverly. Masai Nakanak Saans and Masai Nidisni. I'd like to thank everybody again. I hope you guys all have a good night and stay safe out there. Masai, I would say. Have a good night.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Masai to everybody. Good night. Take
Good
care.
night.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Good
Good
present.
night.